Cassidy had always been better at navigating corporate spaces than I was. She could charm a stranger into handing over an opportunity in under 5 minutes, always flashing that effortless smile and tilting her head just slightly to seem interested, engaged. I used to admire it. Hell, I fell for her because of that confidence. That magnetic, almost intoxicating energy she carried with her everywhere. So when she asked me to come to this corporate dinner in San Diego, I didn't even hesitate. I figured it was one of those obligatory bring your spouse, look normal for the execs kind of events. You know the type, suits sipping overpriced wine, clinking glasses, acting like mergers and boardroom drama were war stories. I wasn't excited about it, but I wasn't going to be that husband. The one who refuses to show up. The thing is, she never actually used the word husband. We arrived at the venue, a glitzy hotel ballroom draped in gold accents and filled with a sea of perfectly curated smiles. Cassidy looked incredible. She wore this black, off-the-shoulder dress that hugged her in all the right places. Her hair was pinned up in that elegant way that always made her neck look longer. I remember reaching for her hand as we walked in, but she pulled it away to adjust her clutch and kept moving. I didn't think much of it. Not yet. We stepped up to a small circle of her colleagues, maybe 8 or 9 people clustered near the open bar. She immediately lit up, all dazzling laughter and confident posture. Then, without missing a beat, she said, "Hey everyone. This is Evan. He's a close family friend." I stood there frozen for half a second, wondering if I'd misheard her. A family friend? Not her husband. Not her partner. Just this ambiguous placeholder that could mean anything or nothing. It felt like a slap. A subtle one, wrapped in charm and delivered with a smile, but a slap all the same. I laughed awkwardly, trying to play along, but I could feel something shift in me. Maybe it was the way no one batted an eye, or maybe it was the way she didn't even glance at me after the introduction, like I had already served my purpose and could now fade into the background. From that moment, I noticed everything. There was a guy, tall, athletic build, sandy hair, navy suit without a tie. He had this relaxed swagger about him, like the kind of guy who never had to try too hard because life handed him things just for showing up. His name was Jordan. Or maybe Jared. Something with a J. He and Cassidy locked into conversation almost instantly. She leaned in when he talked, laughed too hard at his jokes, laughs that were a little too bright, too performative. I stood a few feet away, sipping something that tasted like cologne, watching their body language. It wasn't just friendly. Her posture had changed, shoulders angled toward him, her fingers lightly brushing his forearm during a story. She used to do that to me in the early days, when she still looked at me like I mattered. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was just her being her social, animated, magnetic. But even as I tried to convince myself, I felt like I was watching a scene from someone else's relationship. And I wasn't the guy in it. Sometime after the entree, a dry, forgettable chicken dish drowned in lemon cream sauce, she excused herself. Said she needed to take a call. She took her clutch, her phone, and vanished out into the hallway. I watched her go, watched the swish of her dress disappear behind the ballroom doors, and suddenly the noise around me felt far away. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I walked over to the bar to grab another drink and scanned the room, hoping maybe she had just gotten caught up in a conversation. But she wasn't there. And no one seemed to have noticed she was gone. By the time 20 minutes ticked by, I was half considering texting her, but something in me resisted. I didn't want to be that guy, clingy, insecure, jealous. That's how she always framed it. Anytime I brought up concerns, she'd accuse me of reading too much into things. "You're being suspicious for no reason," she'd say with a smile. "You've got to stop watching those podcasts and think pieces. Not every woman is cheating just because she's independent." When she finally returned, she was glowing. Literally. Her skin had a slight sheen to it, like she'd just come from somewhere warmer, more in asterisk mate than a phone call. Her lipstick had changed, it was a different shade entirely. She'd been wearing a bold, wine red earlier, but now it was a soft, neutral pink. Not something you switched to unless you had to. And then there was the napkin. It slipped partially out of her clutch as she set it down on the table next to me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. But the handwriting caught my eye, a bold, black scrawl across the edge of a folded, white cocktail napkin. A room number. 614. I didn't say anything. I didn't reach for it. I just stared. She caught my gaze and followed it to the napkin, then casually pushed it deeper into the bag and snapped the clasp shut. "What?" she said, smiling. "You look like you just saw a ghost." I shook my head, forcing a laugh that didn't reach my eyes. "Just tired." She leaned in slightly, resting her hand on my arm. "Don't be weird, Evan. It's a corporate dinner, not a mystery novel. Come on, Lighten up. She laughed then, too loudly for the moment, and turned back toward the table. I watched her for the rest of the night, moving from conversation to conversation like she was working a room she already owned. She didn't glance back at me. Not once. And I started to wonder just how long it had been since she really saw me at all. The rest of the night was a blur. I remember the soft jazz band playing some butchered rendition of What a Wonderful World. I remember someone spilling a drink on my shoes. I remember standing next to a window and staring out at the city lights, wondering when exactly things started to slip between us. Maybe it wasn't tonight. Maybe tonight was just the moment I stopped pretending I didn't see it. Because I did see it. All of it. The distance, the shift in her attention, the subtle contempt that had replaced affection. I saw it in the way she smiled for others but never for me. I saw it in her eyes every time I asked her how her week was and she answered with a one-word shrug. I saw it tonight, carved into a napkin tucked inside her designer clutch, too careless to even hide. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask about the lipstick. I didn't bring up the napkin. I just waited until she was ready to leave, then walked her to the valet in silence. She chatted on her phone, something about circling back on a campaign, while I stood a few feet away, cold air biting at the back of my neck. On the drive home, she hummed softly to herself, scrolling through Instagram. I watched the city blur past the window, each street lamp flickering like a dying star. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I tried to quiet the chaos building in my chest. She looked up once and said, "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was starting to wake up. The drive back from San Diego should have been peaceful. Late-night highway, city lights fading behind us, Cassidy humming along to some playlist she always kept on shuffle. I should have felt relaxed. After all, the event was over. The performance, the politeness, the constant scanning of the room for a reason to stay standing, done. But instead, I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. She was scrolling through her phone, barely glancing at the road. I watched the glow of the screen flicker across her face and wondered if the person she was texting had been at that table tonight. Jordan or Jared. The one she kept laughing with like they were at a comedy show I wasn't invited to. Her thumbs danced across the screen, light and familiar. She smiled once. Not at me. At whatever lived inside that tiny glowing rectangle. When she finally put the phone down, she leaned back inside. "What a night," she said, stretching her arms over her head. I needed that. That word needed hit me like static. I nodded without answering. The rest of the ride was silent. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. When we got home, she headed straight for the shower, claiming she felt sticky from the hotel air. She took her phone with her again, locked the bathroom door again, turned the speaker on and blasted music loud enough to rattle the mirror in our bedroom. The water ran for almost an hour. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, trying to remember the last time we'd gone out together and actually felt together. It had been months, maybe longer. Dinners turned into takeout, date nights canceled for strategy sessions, and holidays brushed aside because she was building something big. I supported her. I always had. But somewhere along the way, her world got bigger, and I just kept shrinking inside it. I thought about the napkin again. 614. I didn't want to be paranoid. I didn't want to be the guy who starts snooping, who accuses without proof. But denial, I realized, had its own weight, and I'd been carrying it for a long time. That night, I barely slept. Cassidy came out of the shower smelling like a department store, perfume layered over something I couldn't name. She slid into bed without a word. Didn't reach for me. Didn't even face me. Just turned away. Phone under her pillow. Screen lighting up every few minutes. I watched the wall until morning. Over the next week, things didn't get better. They got weird. She started dressing up more for work. Heels that used to only come out for events, tighter skirts, fresh manicures. I complimented her once, trying to keep things normal, and she smiled a half smile and said, "Thanks, gotta stay sharp in this game." She didn't ask about my day anymore. Didn't even pretend to listen when I tried to share. Conversations became one-sided. Me speaking, her nodding, eyes flicking back to her phone. I started noticing patterns. Her overnight strategy sessions were becoming more frequent, twice a month, then every week. Same excuse every time. Client retreats, team bonding, campaign intensives. Always last minute, always solo. No itinerary, no contact during the trip. She'd return home exhausted but distant, like her mind was still back in some boardroom I'd never seen. One night, after she fell asleep with her phone clutched in her hand, I tried to take a look, just a glance. But the screen was locked, and Face ID didn't work when someone's asleep. She stirred and rolled over, pulling the phone closer like it was a part of her. I felt sick. There were other things, too. Subtle, small. The kind of things you dismiss until they add up into something unmistakable. New lingerie in the laundry I'd never seen her wear. Receipts for rideshare apps from cities she didn't tell me she was visiting. Mysterious calls from Arlo Finance that always came after midnight. When I asked, she said it was just her investment guy. But I don't know any financial advisor who texts "miss you," followed by a winky face. And then there was the cologne. It was on her jacket one morning. Faint but unmistakable. Not mine. Not any of mine. I asked her about it, calmly, gently, and she rolled her eyes. "Are we really doing this?" she said. "You sound jealous." I didn't answer, but I knew what I smelled. I wasn't crazy. It wasn't until I remembered the photo that everything started to shift into focus. It had popped up a few weeks earlier, buried in her Instagram story. Cassidy lounging poolside, cocktail in hand, sunglasses on, captioned, "Living the dream dizzy #, grind hard play hard." But she had told me she was at a 3-day conference in Seattle that weekend. That photo wasn't Seattle. That pool was somewhere warm, somewhere sunny. Definitely not under the gray drizzle of the Pacific Northwest. I had asked her about it back then, and she waved it off, said it was from a few weeks ago, and she just posted it late. I believed her, or at least I told myself I did. Now I wasn't so sure. It's a strange thing, realizing you might have been the last one to see the full picture. Everyone else probably noticed already. Her friends stopped coming around. My name stopped appearing in her captions. Even her parents had grown quiet toward me, like they knew something I didn't but couldn't say it outright. One night, I sat alone in the living room, our anniversary photo album open in my lap, page after page of smiles, trips, holidays, moments that felt permanent. Cassidy's handwriting scrawled in the margins. Notes like, "First snowfall together," or "You always make me laugh when I want to cry." I traced the words with my thumb and tried to remember when we stopped being those people. I think I knew the truth before I admitted it. Maybe I'd known it since that dinner. Since family friend. Cheating isn't always obvious. It's not always lipstick on a collar or coming home late with excuses. Sometimes it's in the silence. The avoidance. The locked phones and forced smiles. The sudden urge to find yourself somewhere that doesn't include the person who's loved you through your worst. And still, I hadn't confronted her. Not yet, because part of me still wanted to be wrong. Part of me hoped I'd misread the signs, that all of this was just stress, a rough patch, a season. But even hope has its limits, and mine was unraveling fast. That night, I opened the drawer in our bedroom where she kept her old electronics. Cassidy was the type to never throw anything out. There, tucked beneath a pile of USB cords and a dusty iPad, I found her old tablet, the one I helped her set up years ago when she started at her firm. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just stared at it, sitting there like a time capsule, a relic from before this version of her existed. Then I reached for it, my hands trembling, heart pounding. I knew that if I opened it, and if it was still linked to her cloud, I'd find answers. I also knew that once I saw them, there would be no unseeing, no going back, no more excuses, no more hope that I sat there staring at the screen, the old tablet humming to life like it had been waiting for me. I hadn't touched it in years. Neither had Cassidy, as far as I could tell. It was the one we used to use on vacations, for watching Netflix on planes, playing music at Airbnb rentals, browsing Zillow listings we'd never follow through on. Back when we still daydreamed together. When it loaded, I entered the old passcode. My birthday still worked. The home screen was cluttered with outdated apps and unread news alerts. Couple folders. Nothing suspicious at first glance. But it was the Photos app that caught my eye, the little red badge showing over 300 unsynced items. I tapped it without thinking, and there it was, her cloud account still linked. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. Not anymore. There were albums she never meant to keep synced, probably thought she'd disabled them years ago. But they were there. All of them. Timestamps. Locations. Faces. The truth, raw and curated in high resolution. The first image that made my stomach drop was from a hotel room, an Art Deco headboard, room service trays, 2 glasses of wine. Cassidy in a robe. Bare shoulder. Taking a mirror selfie, hair down, lips slightly parted. Not provocative exactly, but an asterisk made in a way that felt deliberate. Swipe. Same hotel room. Different day. Different robe. A man's wristwatch resting on the nightstand. I didn't recognize it. I zoomed in on the reflection in the glass of a window. Barely visible, but it was him. Jordan or Jared. The guy from the dinner. That casual, toothy smile. His shirt half-buttoned. Swipe. Vegas. An entire album labeled simply V. Pictures of cocktails, poker chips, poolside cabanas, her in a red bikini I'd never seen before. Posing for the camera. Taking selfies with someone behind her, his hand casually around her waist. His face mostly out of frame. But I knew. I knew it was him. Same build. Same watch. Same sunglasses I'd seen on him at the hotel bar. Then there were the voice notes. I don't know what made me open them, morbid curiosity maybe, but once I started, I couldn't stop. The first one was Cassidy giggling, whispering something like, he still has no idea. Then a man's voice, muffled but clear enough, you're a terrible liar. Followed by her, I'm a great liar. That's why it works. I sat there in complete silence, heart pounding so loud I thought I might actually pass out. Swipe. Play. Swipe. Play. Messages from airports, hotel rooms, Ubers. Flirty, dirty, mocking. Her voice morphing between affection and contempt with alarming ease. One audio file had her ranting about me, my predictable routines, my obsession with control, how he probably thinks I'm in Denver right now. She laughed after that. A deep, unfiltered laugh I hadn't heard in months. I felt like I was floating above my own body. Like I was watching a car crash from the sky, unable to stop it. Unable to look away. Then I opened the Notes app. Big mistake. Inside was a note titled Reasons. I tapped it and what I found was a list, an actual bullet point list of the reasons she gave herself for keeping me around. Some were practical. He pays the mortgage, reliable, parents love him. Others were colder. Too loyal to question anything. Won't make a scene. Would take years to rebuild if I left. And then at the bottom, not exciting, but safe. For now. I stopped breathing. This wasn't just cheating. It wasn't some drunken mistake or a lapse in judgment. She had constructed an entire alternate existence, a second life built on half-truths, rerouted flights, and burner conversations. One version of her smiled across the dinner table at me while the other vanished behind closed doors with another man. And somehow she kept both going. The depth of it hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the planning. The structure. The effort she put into deceiving me, into managing me like I was a prop in her personal stage play. I moved to the email app. Out of reflex. Habit. That's when I found the receipts. Weekend getaways I knew nothing about. Spot treatments in names that weren't hers. Electronic transfers to a Zelle account under J.H. Small enough to go unnoticed, frequent enough to build a pattern. And worst of all, a forwarded confirmation for a couple's massage booked the same week she told me she was in New York presenting to the board. I remembered that week vividly. I'd sent her flowers. She never mentioned getting them. Said she'd been too slammed to talk. She wasn't slammed. She was in Scottsdale. With him. I closed the tablet and sat back, heart racing, vision blurry. She had mocked my trust. Used it like a shield. Every time I chose to believe her, she took that as proof that I was weak, or worse, convenient. And maybe I had been. Maybe I had let it go on too long. I thought about the night we got engaged. She cried when I proposed. Said no one had ever believed in her like I did. I used to replay that moment in my head when things got hard. But now even that felt corrupted. Everything felt corrupted. I wanted to scream. To break something. But I didn't. Instead, I took the tablet, plugged it into the wall, and let it charge overnight. Then I went downstairs, poured myself a drink, and sat in the dark. The house was so quiet. I could hear Cassidy moving around upstairs, her heels clicking across the hardwood, her voice on the phone, laughing. probably talking to a coworker. Or him. Same tone. Same cadence. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. The next morning, I told her I had an early call and left before sunrise. I parked down the street and sat in my car with the windows cracked. Just thinking. Going over every detail. Every excuse. Every little moment I had brushed off. The things she said to throw me off the scent. How quickly she pivoted when I got too close to the truth. I made a list in my head. June, Denver trip equals actually Vegas. August, new lingerie equals never worn for me. October, her birthday dinner equals canceled due to illness. But hotel charges showed up. Christmas, visiting a friend's mom in hospice equals she posted from a rooftop bar in LA. I could keep going. The truth wasn't a single bombshell. It was a million tiny detonations going off over months, slowly reducing our marriage to ash. And I had been standing in the center of it, covering my ears, pretending I didn't hear the explosions. Well, I heard them now, loud and clear. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not even my brother, who would have told me to torch the whole thing to the ground. Not my best friend, who never liked her in the first place. Not even my therapist, who I hadn't seen in months. This wasn't something I needed advice on. It wasn't even something I wanted to talk about. What I needed now was a plan. And clarity. So I went home, said nothing, kissed her on the cheek like nothing had happened. Listened to her lie about work, about traffic, about a meeting that ran long. She didn't even flinch. And I smiled. Because now I was the one with secrets. The morning after I saw everything. Photos, messages, money trails. I woke up before Cassidy. I lay there, eyes open, watching the ceiling glow pale with the slow approach of daylight. She was beside me, facing away, breathing soft and even. I remember wondering if she ever felt guilt while she slept, or if that too had been outsourced to someone like me. I didn't touch her, didn't move, just stared upward, still, as if I were floating in my own house. She got up eventually, same as always, showered, dressed in silence. She put on the same perfume I'd smelled on her jacket that week, the one that wasn't mine. I stayed in bed, pretending to sleep, listening to the sound of her heels click across our hardwood floor and out the door. She didn't say goodbye. She hadn't in weeks. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway. Then I sat up. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. What I felt was sharper, more efficient. Not hot like rage, but cold. Cold and clean and focused. I opened my laptop and began. Months earlier, before the lies had a shape, I had already sensed a fracture. Something small at first. Her phone disappearing every time I entered a room. The way she'd stopped calling me pet names. I couldn't pinpoint why, but it had pushed me to do something I didn't even fully understand at the time. I'd started quietly preparing for the possibility that she might leave, or that I might have to. I'd met with a lawyer under the guise of business planning, opened private accounts, set up a separate email. Felt paranoid back then, maybe even cruel. But now it felt like the smartest thing I'd ever done. That morning I began moving funds. Not to hide them, just to reallocate. We had a shared account for bills, groceries, day-to-day things. But the savings, the investments, the returns on my business, those I had split off into a private entity. One with no digital ties to her. It wasn't theft. It was protection. Next, the house. Our lease in Sonoma was under both names, but the owners were old family friends. They liked me better. I emailed them with a composed, professional request to remove Cassidy from the lease. I included a note that I'd take over full payments through the end of the term and that a new agreement would be signed by the end of the week. They agreed within the hour. "We're sorry to hear things aren't working out," they wrote. I smiled at the screen. Things weren't not working out. They had already collapsed. I spent the rest of the morning combing through her remaining digital footprints, booking confirmations, apps she never remembered to log out of. One of them led me to a storage unit in her name, contents unknown, paid 6 months in advance. Probably her backup escape plan. Cute. I called the number on the receipt and requested early termination. Said the unit would be cleared out within the week. I had her login info. I scheduled movers to collect and box everything, labeled and documented. It wasn't revenge, just a logistical solution. She wouldn't find out about any of this until it was done. By noon, I had arranged everything. Finances secured, lease adjusted, storage unit handled. I even scheduled an automated email to her parents, one I'd written weeks ago and just never sent. It was factual, kind, polite, no accusations, just a summary of some transitions happening and my intention to keep things amicable. I didn't know if Cassidy had told them anything about me lately, but after the email, they'd know something had shifted. Whether or not they sided with her was irrelevant. After lunch, I drove to our house. My house now. I packed her things. Not emotionally. Not with any sense of sadness or panic. Just room by room, drawer by drawer. Neatly folded. Tagged. Her books. Her shoes. Her stupid collection of overpriced candles. I left nothing out. Everything she owned went into boxes. Labeled, dated, and stacked in the guest room. She wasn't going to return to the version of our home that existed in her head. That place was gone. The security system came next. I changed the code, removed her name from the authorized access list, updated the emergency contacts. I installed a backup camera at the front door just in case and synced it to my private email. By 4 p.m., I had done more in a single day than most people do in a week. And I wasn't even tired. If anything, I felt more awake than I had in months. It's strange, what happens when you stop waiting for someone to love you correctly. That night, Cassidy texted around 6:30. Running late. Don't wait up. I replied, no problem, and turned off my phone. I slept at a friend's place, one she never knew well. No forwarding address. No tracker to follow. Just silence. The next morning, she returned. I know this because she tried to open the front door at 7:12 a.m. The camera pinged me. The video showed her entering the old code 3 times. She frowned, pulled out her phone, checked something, tried again. Still nothing. Then she rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. She stood there in a tailored jacket, coffee in hand, staring at the door like it had betrayed her. When no one responded, she crouched and peeked through the mail slot. She must have seen that the living room was empty, spotless, her photos gone from the shelves. A few moments later, she stepped back, blinking rapidly. She tried calling me, twice, then left a voicemail I never listened to. I waited until she drove away before returning to the house. Inside, everything was just as I left it. Clean, quiet, mine. There were no fights, no dramatic confrontation, no screaming in the rain. That would have been easier for her. She would have gotten to cry, shout, maybe even twist the narrative into something palatable. But silence? That was different. Silence doesn't give you anything to argue with. The following week, she sent texts every day. First short ones, then longer. Are you okay? Where are you? What's going on? By Thursday, they turned pleading. By Friday, furious. You can't just do this. This is childish. Be an adult and talk to me. But I was being an adult. I was just being one without her. I never replied. On Sunday, she finally showed up at my friend's place. How she found the address, I don't know. She rang the doorbell like nothing had happened. I watched from the upstairs window. She had that same look on her face from the dinner in San Diego, the look that said she was still in control. I didn't answer. She left after 12 minutes. Later that night, she emailed me. It was long, emotional, rambling. The subject line read, "Let's not end this like strangers." Too late. I archived it without reading past the first paragraph. There's a moment in every breakup where things become irreversible. Not because someone cheated, not even because someone lied, but because someone made the other person feel small, disposable, forgotten. That moment had come and gone for us a long time ago. I was just the last one to realize it. The next morning, I forwarded her work address the location of her boxed items. A storage center closer to her office. Paid for 3 months in advance. With it, I attached a single sentence. Your belongings have been transferred. Please do not return to the house. No anger. No threats. No explanation. She replied, "Is this a joke?" I didn't answer. I was past the point of needing closure. I already had it. It came the moment I decided I didn't want to fight for someone who wouldn't have lifted a finger for me. It came the moment I saw her messages, her voice notes, her receipts. It came when I realized I deserved more than someone who had calculated the value of my loyalty on a note titled Reasons. By the time she understood what I'd done, it was already finished. And that was the point. It didn't happen all at once, her unraveling. That's the thing about isolation. It doesn't knock. It seeps. It begins with silence and ends with echoes you can't shut off. The first sign came 3 days after I cut her out. Cassidy started texting mutual friends. Not the casual ones. She knew better than to expect loyalty from acquaintances. No, she went straight for the people we had built things with. Holiday dinners, lake trips, couples game nights. The ones who had photos of both of us framed in their hallways. At first, her messages were surface level. "Hey, have you heard from Evan? Everything okay?" But I had already prepared them. The night after I locked her out, I sent each of them a digital folder, clearly organized, no commentary. No begging for sympathy. Just facts. Screenshot *TS of her messages. Images from the tablet. Copies of receipts. A few voice notes with timestamped transcripts. I didn't add any narrative. Didn't have to. The truth didn't need a narrator, it just needed a spotlight. Some responded with stunned silence. Others with brief messages, "I'm so sorry, man. I had no idea." A couple never responded at all. I understood. People freeze in the face of betrayal even when they're not the ones wearing the scars. But one thing became clear fast: Cassidy's version of the story, whatever it was, didn't stand a chance. She tried calling them. Visiting. A few of them told me. One friend said she showed up crying, trying to explain how things spiraled. But once they asked her about the photos, the emails, the lies, she shut down. Said it wasn't fair to use her private messages against her. That context mattered. That I was being cold. No one bought it. One by one, the responses stopped coming. Group chats went silent. Invitations dried up. The people she used to brag to now ghosted her like a bad blind date. She wasn't just avoided, she was dismissed. The one thing Cassidy couldn't stand: irrelevance. But it didn't stop there. At work, the fallout took longer, but it hit harder. I didn't plan for that part. Not exactly. But I'd archived more than I realized. Clips of her venting on calls, laughing while mocking her coworkers by name. Notes where she referred to her boss as toothless and terrified, and one especially cutting voice note where she called a new hire walking LinkedIn filler. She thought it was funny. I used to think so too once. I didn't leak them, not directly. But anonymous emails landed in HR with a polite message: "These may be relevant to the company's culture review." No signature. No trace. She never brought it up, but I know it hit her. Because suddenly she stopped posting about work. The hashtag hustle captions disappeared. No more conference selfies. The woman who used to tag every achievement now said nothing. When I checked LinkedIn a week later, I noticed she'd been reassigned internally. Same company. Different department. Lateral move officially. But anyone who's worked in a corporate setting knows that's code for sit quietly and wait for us to forget you. Her world was shrinking. One polite door at a time. Even her family turned quiet. Her mom sent me a message, short but meaningful. "I wish it hadn't come to this. I don't understand who she's become." I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Cassidy's little sister, who used to text me for birthday gift ideas, unfollowed her on Instagram. I only know this because Cassidy switched her profile to private days later. The woman who once flaunted her life for the world now posted cryptic quotes about growth and finding yourself, sandwiched between silent voids where comments used to live. I checked once. Just once. Then I stopped. I wasn't curious about her anymore. I was curious about how long it would take for her to realize that charm has an expiration date when it's not rooted in anything real. The house stayed quiet. Cleaner now. Area. No perfume hanging in the hallway. No charger cords in every room. No one blasting music while getting ready for a night I was never invited to. She tried coming back once. I don't know how she got past the gate. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe luck. I was working on my laptop, halfway through an email, when the camera pinged: Cassidy, standing at the door, sunglasses on, arms folded. She didn't ring the bell this time. Just stood there like she was daring the door to open on its own. I didn't move. Watched from my phone. She pulled something from her bag, an envelope, and tucked it into the side of the mailbox. Then she left. Inside the envelope was a letter. Handwritten. I thought I'd feel something opening it. I didn't. It was long. Winding. A mix of apology and justification. She said she missed me. That she didn't recognize herself anymore. That I had always been the constant and she never realized how much weight I carried until I put it down. She called it a moment of weakness that turned into a series of bad choices. Said she was working on herself. Seeing a therapist. Trying to repair what could be saved. She didn't say his name. Not once. Not even a vague reference. Like if she didn't mention him, I'd forget he existed. I put the letter back in the envelope, taped it shut, and slid it into the shred bin at the office supply store. Let her go to therapy. Let her write 100 letters. I wasn't building a bridge for someone who lit the last one on fire. The next week, I got an email from a lawyer. Her lawyer. It was polite. Measured. A request for a meeting. I agreed. Not because I wanted resolution, but because I already had one prepared. We met in a glass-walled office downtown. Neutral ground. She walked in wearing the same blazer she used to save for big pitches. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. No smile. Just tired eyes and a folder clutched like a life raft. I didn't look at her. Just nodded once. Her lawyer slid the settlement offer across the table. I didn't need to read it. I knew what was in it because I drafted it myself. It was final. Unemotional. Structured. Fair, but not generous. She would keep the car, her jewelry, and the small condo she'd inherited before we married. She'd waive all claims to my pension, business holdings, and residuals. No alimony. No statements to the press. Yes, I added that clause, even if it sounded dramatic. She liked attention too much to leave it to chance. Attached were the receipts. The ones she forgot about. Hotel invoices. Gift receipts. A screenshot asterisk T of her mocking me in a private message. He's so earnest it's almost sad. It wasn't vengeance. It was a mirror. She stared at the document for a long time. Said nothing. Eventually, her lawyer spoke. Do you have any counteroffers? Cassidy shook her head. Her voice was small when she finally replied. No. It's fine. I signed. She signed. I stood to leave. She didn't look up. When I stepped outside, the city air felt cooler than I remembered. There was no victory in it. No thrill. Just release. She wasn't part of my story anymore. She was a footnote. A lesson. A closed chapter with a sharp edge I'd never reopen. And in the space where her chaos used to live, there was finally room for peace. Weeks passed. Then, quietly, Cassidy received the final blow. An official letter from my lawyer's office, clinical, crisp, unshakable. Inside, a packet. Labeled exhibits. Financial records, trips she claimed were work but that had receipts for matching spa appointments. A breakdown of my medical bills from the year she left me to recover alone while she lounged poolside with someone else. Included was the settlement. Cold, calculated, absolute. She could keep the car, some jewelry, and her silence. No contact. No claims. No public commentary. She didn't protest. Didn't beg. Didn't even call. Just signed. And with that, it was over. I live by a lake now, tucked away in Oregon, surrounded by trees that don't ask questions. I wake to quiet mornings and make coffee for one. No one answered texts, no cold glances. One morning, I powered on my phone. Cassidy's name blinked hundreds of times. Please, apologies, anger. I didn't read a single one. I blocked the number, deleted the thread. There was no hate in me. No bitterness. Just a clarity so sharp it felt like light through fog. What she brought?